Greetings, viewers. Welcome to Eden Health Nuggets. In today's episode, we're going to be looking at lifestyle behaviors contributing to the burden of cancer. So cancer is a disease, or it's a condition where your cells, they grow uncontrollably and they start to spread throughout the rest of the body. So normally cells are supposed to grow when cells grow old or they are damaged, they die, and new cells are supposed to come up. But then now when this is not controlled, or if it happens in an uncontrollable manner, then they start to result into tumors, and then they invade the rest of the body, and that's the condition known as cancer. And most of these cancers, they are attributed to our lifestyle, our diet, and environmental factors, much more compared to the genetic factors. So it is said up to about 5 to 10% of cancers are as a result of genetic factors, whereas up to about 90% is as a result of our lifestyle, diet, and also environmental factors. So what it means is we can reduce the burden of cancer. We can try and fight cancer. We can try and prevent cancer, because the major contributing factor of cancers is something that is within our control and something that we can work around with so that we can fight cancer. So cancerous cells are either said to be benign or malignant. So the benign cancers, these are cancers that are not cancerous. So you might find when you do get diagnosed of these cancers, we're not very worried because they're not cancerous. And we do have these cancer cells. Everyone has cancer cells, but it starts to a point where they start to grow uncontrollably. That's when we have an issue with cancers. The malignant cancers are those cancers now that are cancerous, and when we find them, we need to start looking at our diets, looking at our lifestyle. Some of them will need treatment, but those are the type of cancers that are cancerous. And then there are leukemias, which are cancers of the blood, all sorts of cancers of the blood. So those are the major types of cancers that we have. So with cancer cells, normally we say we have the cancer cells, but you'd find that these cancer cells sometimes can grow in the absence of the signal. So our body has to signal these cancer cells either to there's a time where they grow and the body signals them to stop. So sometimes we call them the stubborn cells. They might not listen to this signaling, and they keep growing. And as a result, they start invading other parts of the body, or they actually ignore those signals where they're supposed to be growing and dying. And also sometimes you'd find they also sort of like communicate with the blood vessels. So that the blood vessels channel the blood towards them, which actually makes them grow. And now they have all the oxygen, they have all the nutrients, they keep growing. And instead, they do actually command the blood in form of signals to take away all the waste that they are producing out of the body. So they're actually well taken care of, they're maintained. And as a result, they keep growing and keep growing. So this is ideally what some of how these cancerous cells behave in our bodies if we do have the condition of cancer. And this affects mostly the risk groups, people who smoke, people who drink alcohol, people who struggle with weight management. It also affects people who spend so much time in the sun, and people who are exposed to some environmental carcinogenic particles or products in their workplaces. And also it could be as a result of some viruses and bacteria other than genetic abnormalities that we talked about. So these are the people normally that are affected by cancers. So knowing what risk groups are affected by cancers now helps us to look at how we can try and work around managing cancer. So you also know that with cancers as well, because they're associated or linked to our lifestyles, each and every lifestyle, each and every behavior leads to a different kind of cancer, or exposes us to different kinds of cancers. For instance, if you can't manage your weight, or for people who have obesity, that can result in breast cancers in women, uterine cancers, whether they're cancerous or not cancerous. And also, it can also be cigarette smoking can affect your lungs. It can affect you can actually have mouth sores that can be also said to be cancerous. It can be esophageal cancers and cancers of the chest, because this is where most of the particles are, the carcinogens are. And for people who are not on a plant-based diet or eat red meat, you'd find that there are substances that are produced when you cook red meat at high temperatures, nitrous or chemicals that are produced. Also, you'd find there's red meat or other processed foods that are preserved with nitrates or nitrites. All of those are said to be carcinogenic, which can actually cause, some can contribute to leukemias, which we said are blood cancers, or colorectal cancers. Colorectal cancers being a combination of the colon cancers or the rectal cancers, usually that affect our gastrointestinal system or our gut or our stomach. And some of the cancers are as a result of low intake of adequate food that is recommended, like fruit and vegetable or calcium. So when you don't take in enough calcium or fruits and vegetables, it also leads to these colorectal cancers. And the names are different for all of these cancers, but sometimes you start with early on symptoms where you are inflamed, you can't stomach food, or you can't digest food properly. All of these things can eventually be diagnosed at a later stage that you do have these colon cancers. And physical activity is also another thing that we look at when looking at types of cancers. For those people who don't exercise, who lead a sedentary lifestyle, you find in the long term, especially for women, there has been an association of uterine cancers or breast cancers for women who don't participate in, regular exercise or physical activity. So the cancers are there, but we can try to prevent. So for people who smoke, like we said, smoking, we have to quit smoking, because actually with cigarette smoke, it has the major particles of these carcinogenic particles that spread. So we look at smoking either as the person who's actually smoking, or also the people who they inhale the smoke from the people who are smoking, or even not only cigarette smoke that comes as a result of industrial byproducts and so forth. So all of those can contribute to cancers. So we should try and stay away from such smoke or cigarette smoke. And then for people who take alcohol, it's also recommended that you try and reduce or stop taking alcohol. And if you work in an environment where you know you have these environmental exposures that are carcinogenic, then you need to wear protective apparel, protective gear. And there are people who work outdoors. You need to try by all means to stay away from extended long periods in the sun, or use, your sun hats or anything that can prevent you from sun exposure. Also, when we look at our lifestyle as well, you'd find there are a lot of chemicals all around. Sometimes we can't even prevent them. They are everywhere. Like everything has become so polluted that even the air we breathe is not as pure as it's meant to be. And in such a instance, there's nothing that you can really do to control environmental factors like that. But if you can from your homes, then know where to burn your waste, and just to control the amount of smoke that goes in the air or other particles. If you work around with chemicals that produce fumes, that's also another way that we can, if each person can do this, then eventually we can try to make sure that our air is a little bit it's pure. It might not be as pure as we want it to be. But in the event that we can't manage these, that's when we also resort to our dietary practices, where we say a diet rich in fruits and vegetables is recommended. And it's the vegetables they have high antioxidant properties, and they have these phytonutrients that help scavenge these free radicals that are all over in the bodies that promote cancerous cells or the growth of those cancerous cells. So, for instance, you'd find some foods that have chemopreventative properties are turmeric. Most people know that I have to take turmeric. It's anti-inflammatory. And it's anti-chemo. It's actually chemopreventative. The main compound or the main thing that we find in turmeric that helps with that is curcumin. So you can actually take it as curcumin if you do find curcumin in form of some nutrient supplements. But usually we say if you get turmeric, you get things like your curcumin. Like pineapple has what we call bromelain, which is also anti-inflammatory, and it's also chemopreventative as well. It's something that we can take. We have sulforaphane, berberine that we find from our red grapes. We find them from our cruciferous vegetables like your cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower. So these are actually also things that we can incorporate in our diets. And if you look at these active components that I'm talking about, you'd find you actually buy them from your drugstores or your health stores. So the best way for us to have these is to incorporate them in form of food in our diet. And in as much as a plant-based diet is one of the best diets to help fight any disease in most cases, if you do eat meat, it's very wise if you can opt for, grass-fed beef, also free-range chicken, because these are feeding straight from nature and they're not being injected with any hormones, and these end up affecting our own hormones, contributing to these cancers. And in most cases, they actually affect women now, where you have these uterine cancers, you develop certain things, you have fibroids, and now you can't give birth, or you struggle to give birth, or you have birth complications, breast cancer. We actually talk of this. It might be something that's on the surface, but we have people who actually have lost a part, like one breast or even both, due to cancers, and some of them that could have been avoided or prevented by looking at our dietary approaches, our lifestyle and environmental factors as well. So we also talked about the micronutrients. So micronutrients mostly you find in your fruits, in your vegetables, of all colors. We promote fruits and vegetables of all colors, like tomatoes have lycopene. We say you should have at least a rainbow plate. So meaning to say have all the fruits in all colors. These help us so much with your carotenoids, which are also known as chemopreventative as well. So there's quite a lot of things that we can incorporate in our diets. There's a lot of things that we can cut from our diets if we can, like processed foods. We need to stay away from processed foods, and when we do our shopping, make sure that you know the preservative that has been used in your product. And when I talk of ingredients, some of them actually go beyond what we eat. It's also what we apply on our skin that can contribute to some of these cancers as well. So when we look at the issue of cancers, it's a holistic approach. It's what you eat, when we look at environment, what you put on your skin that can be absorbed in your bloodstream. It's a lot of factors that we need to take note of, so that at least we can be able to try and work around managing cancer, or try to prevent, so that we don't have these uncontrollable growth of cells. And also you get like your Brussels sprouts and broccoli and cabbage. They have also an active ingredient called I3C or Indo-3-carbinol, which is actually something that is being used or being researched medically to help fight cancers, uterine cancers, particularly for women as well, and even some prostate cancers for the men. So all of these things, all of these compounds, we're finding them in food. But when you go now and buy them, it looks like you're hearing all of these big words. Whereas if you are someone who just regularly eat your healthy meals, you have your fruits, you have your vegetables in the right proportions, then you have all of these incorporated in your diet already. And then obviously we can always make sure that instead of using too much of these spice mixes, we can go for our culinary herbs, which are your cumin, we have coriander, parsley, rosemary. All of those also help because they do have these antioxidant properties as well. For those who like to drink tea, green tea is actually one of the best teas that we promote. Not that it stands out, but green tea is actually a very good tea to take. It's very rich in antioxidants. And also for those people, just besides talking about the cancers, for those people who struggle with mental health or a little bit anxious, it also has L-theanine, which helps you to calm you. And sometimes even for cancer patients, sometimes they get so stressed out, they need something, just a calmative. Green tea has those. But all of these factors, all of these foods, we should learn to take in moderation. Anything that you take has to be in moderation. It doesn't matter if it's a good thing, but too much of it, if it's in excess, can actually bring harm to you. So we can also make sure that we have adequate vitamin C, vitamin D, and vitamin E. These are the vitamins that we say have they are very potent antioxidants. So we need them for fighting these free radicals and reducing free radical damage. So if we do all of these things, we can be able to prevent cancers. And for those who are already suffering from cancers, when you do plan your diets, the things that we also just look at, registered nutritionist or a dietitian can help you with this, or your practitioner, but you need to work around your macronutrients versus your micronutrients of what you take in. Sometimes there's loss of appetite, you can't even eat anything. So there's certain medications that you can take, but there are also nutrition supplements that include fulvic acid that helps to channel nutrients in the body. But all of this has to be done under the guidance of maybe an oncologist or whatever specialist who's seeing you, because there are some of the things, even if they are natural, you might need to take them and pause for a week before. For people who are going through sessions of treatment, you need to stay away from them during treatment or a few days after treatment. So all of these things are they're things that we just need to try and work around with our practitioners. But if we can just try to moderate and watch on our diets and keep fit, keep well, and try to exercise where we need to exercise. But with most cancers, like I said, it's 90% as a result of our lifestyle, dietary, and also environmental factors. So those are the things that we can focus on so that we can reduce the burden of these cancers. Thank you so much for watching today. We look forward to meeting you in the next episode.